Hello, Man in Gray here with another Man in Gray book review. Today's book is Gun Crazy by John Kiskus, published by the British Film Institute Publishing in 1996. It's 88 pages long. This is part of a series called the BFI Film Classic Series, and they are short little books, each one about an important film from past years. Some of these films are famous, like The Wizard of Oz, Citizen Kane, and Shawshank Redemption, and others are much more obscure, like Pandora's Box and Caravaggio. But they're all important historically in film history. Gun Crazy was a 1950 film noir released by United Artists and directed by John Lewis. It stars John Dahl as Bart Terre and Peggy Cummings as Laurie Starr. Basically, what happens is Bart Terre is obsessed with guns from a young age. He doesn't like to kill things. He strictly likes to shoot at targets and so forth, but he's obsessed with guns. And at age 14, his life changes. He's walking down a sidewalk and he sees a beautiful handgun on display in a hardware store. He breaks the glass and steals the gun, but almost immediately is caught by a cop. And then he is sentenced to 4 years in reform school. When he gets out of reform school, he's immediately joins the military, joins the army. It's World War II. And he works in the army as a rifle instructor. He teaches sharpshooting and sniper techniques. When he gets out of the war, he goes back to his hometown and meets up with two of his high school buddies, and he talks about how he wants to possibly get a job with Smith & Wesson, the gun company, and go around the country demonstrating rifles and doing trick shooting and so forth. But before he can even start doing that, a fateful decision is made. The three of them decide to go see a carnival that's in town, a traveling carnival. And while there, Bart meets a young, beautiful blonde woman, Laurie Starr, who's working as a trick shot artist. And he's taken with her, and he's impressed with her shooting skills. And after the show is over, he meets her backstage and challenges her to a shooting contest, which Bart wins. Well, she's also smitten with him, and she's kind of tired of traveling around the country in this kind of seedy carnival show. And so the two of them run off together and get married. But very quickly, they run through Bart's savings, and they're living in kind of a flea bag hotel and eating, the cheap food. And then there's this pivotal scene where Laurie says, "Look, I can't live like this. We're going to need to get some money fast." And she suggests they start robbing banks. And then she basically says, "If you don't go along with this, then I'm going to leave you." Well, Bart's conflicted about this, and that's usually the case in these film noirs. He's conflicted about it, but he doesn't want to lose her. And so they decide to stage a robbery. And so the bulk of the film is basically they're planning these elaborate bank jobs. And they become kind of famous because there's this young couple, handsome, beautiful couple, robbing banks, and the FBI is kind of tracking them down, trying to find them. Well, as this goes on, Bart gets increasingly troubled about what he's doing. He knows it's wrong to rob banks, but he's so in love with Laurie that he can't drag himself away. In fact, the poster, the very opening title page of the book shows the poster for the film, and if you can see the title there, it says, "Nothing deadlier is known to men. Deadly is the female." That was actually the working title of the movie, was "Deadly is the Female," and then they changed it to Gun Crazy. So he gets increasingly worried about this, and also he notices that as the robberies go on, Laurie gets more and more violent, and at one time she almost shoots a bank guard, and at the last moment, Bart intervenes and pulls her hand down so he doesn't kill him. He doesn't want anyone to die in these robberies, but she seems to be indifferent. So they break up for a time, go their separate ways, but then they get back together because neither one of them can live without the other. And Laurie decides, why don't we pull one last huge robbery, and then we'll quit and we'll head to Mexico and live there. And so they plan to rob an armor meat packing plant. They get jobs in the meat company, in the meat packing plant, and they use that to kind of case the joint. They figure out where the money is and when the payroll truck is going to arrive. And the payroll truck arrives and the robbery goes off without a hitch, except at the last second there's a little glitch and Laurie shoots and kills two of the employees. And there's this remarkable scene, this stunning scene where they're running through the meatpacking plant and you see hundreds of these cow carcasses, these beef carcasses, as they're running with their guns through this meatpacking plant. It's a pretty striking image. They wind up going back to Bart's hometown, and they stay in his old house. But the local sheriff, who turns out now, while all this was going on, one of Bart's childhood friends becomes the local sheriff. He realizes something's up, something fishy about that. And when he arrives, they take off into the mountains, and so his childhood friend is forced to put a posse together and try to track them down. Now, I'm not going to give away the ending, but you can kind of guess what's going to happen. Film noirs never end very happily. Okay. In this book, John Kitskis lays out the background for the film, how it was made. It's really remarkable that it came together at all. It was a fairly low-budget operation. It wasn't quite a B movie. It was kind of in between an A-list movie and a B movie. They were hoping to get Gregory Peck to star in it, but they wound up getting John Dahl. Now, John Dahl had been a child star. He appeared in the movie Corn is Green, and a couple of years before he'd been in Alfred Hitchcock's film Rope, and later on he starred in or was in the cast of Spartacus, which was also written by Dalton Trumbo. And Peggy Cummings was an Irish actress who had had a pretty successful career in the UK. In 1945, she was brought over to the United States, but she was stuck playing basically second banana roles and playing goody two-shoe characters. This film, Laurie, is the only character she plays where she isn't a goody two-shoes type. And after the completion of Gun Crazy, she got married and moved back to the UK, and this was her final American film. But she went on to have a successful career in the UK. So the book basically lays out how the film was made and some of the extraordinary scenes in it. This movie, in some ways, was way ahead of its time. The very first bank robbery is done in a single take. And remember, this is 1950, before they had small portable cameras. They cut the back end off of a car and put a camera in there, and a cameraman kind of roped to the camera so he wouldn't fall off. And they shoot the entire scene from the back seat of the car. And to make it even more realistic, the director had the two leads improvise their dialogue. They drive up to a real bank. I think it's in Modesto, California. They drive up to a real bank, and the only people who knew that this was a fake robbery were the workers in the bank. All the people standing in line thought it was a real robbery, and the people on the outside thought it was a real robbery. So Bart goes into the bank, and Laurie is staying outside in the getaway car, and they're both dressed up as cowboys, as rodeo cowboys, which would allow them to go into a bank with a gun without triggering any warnings. But while she's waiting, a cop shows up, and so she gets out and talks to him, tries to distract him, and when the alarm goes off, she pulls out her gun and clubs him unconscious, and then the two of them jump in the car and drive off. And this entire scene, it's about an 8-minute scene shot in one single take. So that's pretty remarkable. There's a lot of innovative camera work, and of course, being film noir, there's a lot of dark shadows and odd angles and so forth. And this movie had a big influence on another movie that came out almost 20 years later, 1969's Bonnie and Clyde, directed by Arthur Penn, which is also about a young couple who go on a bank robbing / killing spree. And you can also tell that that it had some influence in the movie Badlands and Natural Born Killers. So pretty important movie, despite the fact that it was a B movie that didn't get much attention when it was first released. John Dahl went on to make Spartacus, as I said a while ago, and he was one of the first actors to make a transition into television. Of course, in the 1950s, television was all done live. He was comfortable with long takes because the movie Rope, the Alfred Hitchcock movie he'd made 2 years before, was made up entirely of long takes. It's an experimental Hitchcock film in which every scene is 10 minutes long, shot in long takes. And since TV was done kind of the same way in these long takes in between commercial breaks. And so he did a lot of that. Unfortunately, Dahl's career was cut short when he died from a heart attack in 1971 when he was only 50 years old. So if you've seen Gun Crazy, you're going to enjoy this book because there's a lot of still photographs, there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff, and the book ends with a 1995 interview where John Kitskis goes to Ireland and interviews Peggy Cummings about this movie, and Cummings talks about how the whole cast got along real well and how they were all enthusiastic about it. She was a little irritated that the budget was so tiny. She actually wore her own clothes in most of the scenes because the costumes they had were all ratty and kind of worn out. So it's one of those situations where they were able to make a really good movie despite the low budget. In fact, the low budget kind of encouraged them to take chances and do things that a bigger budget movie director probably wouldn't do. So if you've seen Gun Crazy, you're going to enjoy this book. If you've never seen the movie, you might want to get this book and then watch it. It's available on a number of streaming platforms, and of course, it's available on DVD as well. The book is Gun Crazy. The author is John Kitskis, and this has been another Man in Gray book review. I'll see you next time.